Hey, welcome back to BarryT's Garage, and we've got another episode with Ed Smith. Ed's going to share stories, wisdom, experience, and his opinion. Hi, Ed.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be together again.
Good to see you, yeah.
Yeah, it's
a little chilly this morning, but tomorrow's supposed to be 80.
Is it really?
Yes, I can't wait to get up in the morning. We got some outside projects to do coming up, and so it'd be nice to be a little bit warmer.
Yeah.
So we're going to enjoy that.
We'll take it.
So what we got going on today?
Well, we've got, the questions are stacking up faster than we're answering them.
I suppose we have so many people asking questions. Well, they're all good questions, and I like to answer them the best we can. Again, it's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I hope it's a good opinion sometime. Yeah.
That's right.
We enjoy that.
So it's a lot of fun. And maybe we can help some people.
Yeah, I hope we can. Questions. Yeah.
So here we go. We're going to jump right in. Someone named Harry says, I'm 71 and I've been working on cars all my lifetime as a way to save money. See, some people aren't professional mechanics.
Cool.
Got to just save money and do it yourself. I'm learning so much and enjoying watching the videos. So that's good. I have a Chevy 350 with a cracked block. And I don't know about block sealer. Do you know anything about block sealers, where you buy it, what they're about?
There's not much block sealer you can do to a block. Depends on where it's cracked.
Okay.
Just they could be cracked anywhere. We get quite a few. We just really be careful when we get a motor out of a boat in Arizona, because they take them up north and leave them up there in the wintertime and forget to drain the water, and they come back here and they got huge cracks in the block.
Okay, right.
Down the lifter galley from one end of the block to the other, or down around the pan gasket area and the bottom where the water is, and cracks at one or the other. So we don't repair cracks in our industry, in our business. We don't repair cracks.
Okay.
That sort of way.
So
it depends where it's cracked again.
Okay.
Sometimes we end up with our Chevy motors that I'll grind through the thing around the pan rail, making a stroker out of it. Okay. Then if we got that apart, we'll clean the motor out and find that we ground a hole through it. Then we can put some block filler in it.
Okay.
And that's a special silicone that comes in a gallon jar. It's dry. Okay. It's like cream of wheat cereal or something. Add water to it. And then with the blocks, we pour maybe a couple inches in the bottom of the pan. But above the pan, I'll let it dry, and it would be cement.
Okay.
And that's how we fix a hole in the block down below.
So
I don't know where we buy it from our hot rods things in our automotive store. Machine shops should have it.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy to find, because we have no problem getting it.
All right. Well, Harry, we wish you luck fixing that.
Good. Yeah. Sorry about the motor crack.
That's right. Okay, next question from Tommy. He says, didn't Smokey Yunick have something to do with designing the Holly carb? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that. I don't know where.
Yeah.
I think the Holly carb was mainly back into the Flatheads.
That's way back.
Yeah, way back with some small one-barrel Holly carburetors. And they came on Ford 6-cylinders, that design, maybe Ford Holly type thing with that float bowl like that.
You use trial and error because that's what you had to do. Sometimes you learn from our elders. Could this have been a way to figure out where to put the X pipe in an exhaust system?
An exhaust system, a little bit where to figure it, but sometimes you don't have a choice, because you got the transmission there and you don't want to put it under the transmission because you can't run over something and knock it off.
Right.
And you got to get it up in the frame behind the cross member or rear motor mount. And it gets up in the frame, and that's where the manufacturers usually put it, up where the pipes are real close together, right next to the drive shaft.
Right.
And the X pipe is probably maybe only the factory ones where it's only like 6 or 7 inches long between the two pipes. And definitely in front of the muffler. And I think usually they put them up as close to the transmission as you can, but still have some place where clearance to put them in there. That's common sense.
It gets practical at.
Yeah, you can't say so many inches and then you get in trouble.
Yeah,
I think so.
People with your mentioning of painting the exhaust pipe, and they're thinking into that. So
yeah, right, yeah.
That's good. Tony says keeping high revs and building a 377 or a 383 to stay at the top of the track. Yeah. And the question is, wouldn't a 383 stroker turn as much or more RPMs than a 377?
Not quite. It's a heavy. The pistons and rods are all heavier. Anytime you get that stuff rotating, the 377 would go up and down in RPMs, like stopping in the corner and accelerating a lot quicker than the 383 will.
Huh.
Now, the 383's got big muscle.
Okay.
Big muscle, that's where you get the torque. That's why everybody likes that, you know. And that would just stay at the top of the track, or circle track we're talking.
Yeah.
And drag racing, depends on if you had a heavy car. You definitely wouldn't want a 377 motor in a heavy car.
Right.
Yeah, it would. You drop the clutch and it'd probably kill the engine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's no momentum going. So that weight and revolving weight and it's important, really important on whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
You got to choose that for how much your car weighed, know exactly what you're doing to it. Yeah.
Right.
There's no rule that one's going to do more than the other one.
Right. And then I'm also thinking, you're making me think about what you said about the rear axle ratio. It's always going to be wrong.
It's always wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you win the race.
Yeah. Then that was
Then
the
you
right
don't
one.
tell nobody. That's why you mark on your rear ends some gear ratio than what's on there. Put in there 6.0 or 6.17 or something, and really it's not that at all. And let them look at it. That's part of racing.
You are funny. I love it. You know, and this is why it's a special thing that Ed is willing to share his old secrets, because most racers it's like into them that they can't share anything. And
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You got past that.
We can share anything, not necessarily is that the truth. Yeah.
That's right. Oh, I love
It's
it.
like one time, race cars, and I did do that. I took a bubble, a little plastic bubble that cost me a couple bucks, that sits on a motorhome dash on a motorhome.
Yep.
And that's when you park the motorhome, you can level it so the wife is happy, and the eggs don't float over to one side of the skillet when she's cooking, make her happy.
Right.
And I took that little level, so 4 bubbles on it, and I glued it on the cowl of the dirt track car.
Okay.
I just glued it on there. And the inspectors were more worried about that level, which was absolutely the worst thing you probably, that mean nothing. When you go around the track, you're not going around the track 100 miles an hour, you're going to look and see where the level's at. Or which way is the car sitting in the pits, if it's level or not or whatever. It had nothing to do with anything, but they was more concerned with that level than they were checking the rest of the car and the motor and cubic inches and things like this.
So you distracted the tech inspection.
Oh, yes, that's a part of it, yeah. And another guy that had down here, he's really a cool guy, Jerry Miller, if anybody remembers him. I heard his name. He's been around for a long time. He used to work for NASCAR.
Okay.
Yeah, for a while.
Uh-huh.
And he had a choke cable,
Uh-huh.
a big long choke cable for the driver, and ran it over and drilled a hole in the top of the rear end. Stuck it in there and epoxied it. The rear end housing turned the back of the car. Okay. And that created all kinds of concern. It didn't hook to nothing. Yeah, it's just a cable.
Oh, you
So
guys.
fun ever.
You guys are funny. I love it. You said you've got 2 ways to build a 377, just the way Ed describes. You can also use standard bore 350 with a 400 crank. It sounds like something Dave Freiberger or Engine Master should compare. So have you done that?
Yeah, sure.
And what do you think of it?
It's the same.
Okay.
If you buy a stroker crank or use that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're pretty much interchangeable?
Well, the parts are interchangeable. You just got to do the machine work and get it to work. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the same thing as putting a 350 crank and putting in a 400. You end up, that's where you get that cubic inches out of it. Then there's a set of double bearing main bearings. There are 2 sets of bearings. One set on, like 2 sets of main bearings, one on top of the other one.
Okay.
And double them up on a smaller crank. And it goes in that big bore 400 block.
Okay.
The mains are bigger diameter. The block is. You should have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone wants you to comment about the Chevy 427 that is a 454 with a 396 crankshaft.
Yes, I love that motor.
Do you?
Yeah. That
Why
was
do
a
you
good
like it?
boat motor.
Uh-huh.
And even we had, some years ago, we had a 396 motor with a GMC blower on it, like this blower here, with carburetors on it. And he'd come back from the lake and we'd drag racing that motor. We're here at the river and then at Firebird Lake and drag racing it. He came back in the tachometer at 7,500.
Wow.
It's a 396.
Uh-huh.
And so the same way, was a small bore, and it would go that many RPMs easily.
Wow.
And so we claimed 427 because if we would have claimed 396, I know they would have protested us, called us lamb. So we changed. We told them it was a 427. It really was the 396. But we ran out many for months and months and never blew a head gasket.
So that is a good one.
Yeah, and the 427 seemed like that's the most. That was the L88 motor. That's a lot of people love that motor.
Mm-hmm.
The bore and the stroke seemed to be the right combination. And they were racing Camaros. We raced Camaros those days, 4-speed cars and single 4-barrel cars with 427. And that motor really put out a lot of horsepower. And the 454, the pistons and stuff are way too heavy.
Oh, that's
You can't really get a 454 to go much over 6,500. It's almost impossible in a jet boat.
Yeah.
It takes so much horsepower to pull that prop in the water. But 6,500 is about it for a 454.
Okay.
And 502 is about the same thing, and 502 was just a 502. It had a lot of torque, but it wasn't my favorite motor.
So you're saying for high RPM, you love the 427?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is another one that I don't know anything about, but you might. What is Ed's opinion on modded GM SMOG heads like 993s that were often used in circle track classes?
I don't know much about 993 head. No, I don't.
Okay.
We did run some 305 heads. It was a small chamber head, and we put bigger valves in it. Yeah, we did that.
So that was one
That's
SMOG
a
head.
smaller port. Yes, a smaller port, a smaller chamber. CC's in the chamber.
So you're getting compression out of that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And we like to put the 1 5/8 valves, exhaust valves in it, so that port's exhaust would flow a little better
I see.
than that small 1.5 valve.
Okay.
So we did that a lot.
Very good. Well, that's a fair answer. He didn't know that specific one, but he gave you something else. That's good. Michael asks, Ed, do flathead Mopar 6-cylinders benefit by 2 into 3 into 1 headers that merge into one tailpipe, or what do you suggest is best for intake scavenging? Or do the flathead 6s not benefit by that kind of exhaust?
They would. Anything would. If you get the firing order right. You
Okay.
have to mark the firing on where you're on paper so you know which one fires. So don't get them mixed up. But yeah, that would be fine for Dodge. Some of those Dodge Flatheads you're talking about. When I was younger, maybe at 14.
A little younger?
That's a little younger. Yeah. Yesterday I was 84.
That's right. Happy birthday,
Yeah.
Ed.
So when I was 14, I was a few years younger than me. Some of the neighbors had Plymouth, a 34 Plymouth sedan, circle track car, a 3H man. He could keep right up with the flatheads and sometimes beat them.
Okay. Wow.
Keep up with the V8s.
There's some things you can do. It's worth doing.
Yeah.
Just watch this, and wow, I've been looking for this kind of info on YouTube for years. Love all the old tricks. Okay. I have a question for Ed. How have camshafts for flathead Mopars improved since the 60s? You know anything about the camshafts for those things?
He must be talking about a racing camshaft. Again, 50s and 60s, they were racing that flathead Mopar.
Really?
Again, let's just say, at 34 Plymouth, they'd keep up with the V8s and circle tracking.
Okay. I had no
And
idea.
again, you're going to go and get the guy that the little machine shop that can grind camshafts and grind whatever you want. That's all. They're solid lifter motors. They weren't hydraulics or anything. You could get any kind of camshaft you want to get in those days.
Okay.
I think in those days you could get somebody to grind a camshaft for $30, $40 and change the whole profile of it.
What did those engines
So
like?
it wasn't like, I don't know if he's talking about the stock camshafts one better than they are now. No, he's talking about racing camshafts, I think.
Yeah, if he's talking about improvement, that means you're messing with it.
Yeah. So right now, I don't know if you can get anybody. I'm sure some of those cam grinders like Schneider and San Diego and some of those other to grind you one for a flathead Plymouth.
Okay. So
60 was the slant 6.
right. So
They
until
stopped,
60,
59 is the last flathead Plymouth or Dodge.
what would you think those engines liked if you're going to change the profile, what would you like to do to them?
Probably not much, because again, you got the intake flow, airflow, and exhaust airflow. You could put the dual exhaust on, and I think for a while you could buy a Fenton header for that Dodge 6-cylinder cast iron header for 2 outlets, 2 pipes.
Okay.
But most people just made their own, or else cut a hole in the pipe and weld their flange on, made dual exhaust on it. But the bigger the pipe, on that car, I would run probably a 2.25 inch pipe off the split manifold.
Okay.
And of course, you'd want to, anytime we split a manifold, a little trick there is to take the manifold, the 6-cylinder manifold, and go on the back side and decide where you want to cut it, and cut a 1/4 inch crack in it, 1/4 inch wide across the manifold, and take that piece out and put a spacer. In other words, a piece of steel, 1/4 inch, maybe 2 by 2, whatever fits, and drive it down in that hole. So separate the front from the back
Okay.
of the exhaust, and then weld that crack up. You don't have to cut the manifold in 2 pieces.
Huh.
Sometimes you used to have somebody that cut the manifold in 2 pieces and plug both ends. But then you never got to go back on the motor again.
Oh.
It misaligned everything.
So it keeps the dimensions and the alignment.
Exactly the same by just cutting a little slice in the back, 1/4 inch by something, and fitting a piece of steel down and drive it down in there and weld that crack back up again. That separates the front and the back, wherever you happen to be. And that makes it a split manifold then, instead of just 2 pipes on the old manifold.
Right.
And that's where you get your help.
I think this is a perfect time to go right into the slant 6.
Slant 6.
Yes.
There's a little slant 6 history about that. And I had some friends in Detroit, one of the guys that worked for the Ram Chargers, a little short guy, and he had about a 38 Willys coupe. He raced in Detroit and Toledo in a gas class 6-cylinder. But he was the dyno guy that ran the dyno for the Ram Chargers at the factory. So he was a factory employee. He put this slant 6 in this Willys. I think he lowered the class record by 2 seconds or something. He raced in Detroit then in the Winter Nationals, I think in 1960, in Indianapolis. He set the records there, some more records and stuff, but he was a nice guy, and I used to talk to him a lot. And the 225 slant 6, you have to be careful with that 225 because it broke the crank after 6,000 RPMs.
Okay.
There had too much vibration and too much harmonics. You couldn't get it out of it.
Okay.
And balance it out, whatever you want to do to it.
Right.
On the 170 was a short stroke, an inch shorter stroke. And that motor would go $7,000.
Really?
Yes. And that's the one he chose to set that class records and stuff, and he could get that many RPMs out of it. And all kinds of things. The intake manifold was different. The Hyperpack, that's the aluminum 6-cylinder manifold.
You said Hyperpack?
Hyperpack is Chrysler's name for their high-performance 6-cylinder division.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a 4-barrel carburetor and an exhaust system and a little bit of a camshaft. And some other water pump was different. And they put it on some 1960 or 61 Valiants and Lancers to drag race.
So that was factory-sponsored racing
Yes.
by Dodge and Chrysler.
Yes,
and
I still have most of that literature I have. I'm sure I do. Factory literature on doing that and how much horsepower put out. Yeah, it was fun.
Wow. Now, a lot of people, I only accidentally, being around people like you, know what the Ram Chargers were. It's before my time. But could you take just a minute and explain what that was?
Ram Chargers was a whole group that started, and I think, I don't know what year they did, but they had a early Chrysler motor like this 392 here, and they had a 49 Plymouth, 2-door sedan.
Okay.
And they were trying to get how much horsepower out of it. And they even had the 2 carburetors on them, and the carburetors, they had an intake manifold they made with 8 pipes sticking out of it. And then they had a box on some straps with rubber hoses, and had different length of rubber hoses, so they could raise that carburetor box with carburetors on it as high or lower as they want to on the engine to make the rams longer or shorter.
Okay, so they're testing.
Yes, get the volume different by just changing these 8 hoses that go from the intake manifold up to the box.
Yeah.
To the carburetor box and stuff then. And they had exhaust, a real wide exhaust. Exhaust went out through the fender and big megaphones. They were trying to work on that, things like maybe a motorcycle today. With that pipes and different flows and stuff on these things. And they had a real fast, but it was a Chrysler engineers with that program and then they end up with the super stock cars and competitive with Ford
Right.
and Chevrolet.
So it's kind of like their
That was
factory team.
Factory team.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a factory team part of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
They were interested. And they would talk to you if you asked them any questions. It wasn't like a bunch of secret people, but LX was their driver, I think, and some of those guys. It was fun.
Yeah. Before Richard Petty got a hold of everything, I
Yeah,
guess.
he was in there too, I think.
Was he?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Yeah, he was into everything.
Yeah. All right.
He didn't tell the truth either.
Just by the way. That was consistent. I love it. Here's a question. We just accidentally ran into NASCAR, and the next question is a NASCAR question. When NASCAR ran V6 engines in the late 80s and early 90s, do you know, did they use the base engine of the 3800 or 3.8 with a countershaft to balance the engine?
I never heard of a 3.8 with a countershaft.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't know anything about those motors.
Okay.
Stop right there. That was a little bit more money than we had.
Okay.
We didn't know anybody that had that much money.
The NASCAR people
No friends of mine had that much money.
Yeah, you didn't quite get to the NASCAR
Yeah, we
world.
didn't get to there, yeah.
Okay, so we don't know, but that's okay. Somebody will know. Maybe someone will make a comment.
Yeah, somebody might
that
answer
knows.
that. Yeah.
That would be great. Just incidentally, Mel Martin's Auto Museum here in town, they have a stock car that I think is a V6 that's in their museum.
Yeah.
It might be fun to take a field
It was
trip.
Grand National Motor
Oh, yeah.
type thing, yeah.
Yeah, it might be fun to take a trip out there sometime with you.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you
But
about
I
that.
did have, talk about NASCAR, and one of the things, I did have a good friend, Clint Bronner, was here in town, and he was the mechanic of the year in Indianapolis racers for several years in a row.
Oh,
And Mario Andretti's mechanic. He had a little shop over here on 7th Street, and I used to go to his house, and he used to come to my shop and buy a few things. And actually, there's a manifold hanging up on the wall there that he gave me.
oh,
It's
really?
a half of a Chevy fuel-injected manifold, casted but never finished, never machined.
Huh.
And he asked me one time, "You want that manifold?" I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." So I hung it on the wall, and it's been hanging on the wall ever since.
Nice.
That's a few years ago.
Yeah.
So what a good guy he was. And he was everybody's friend, Clint Bronner.
Huh.
Mechanic of the year at Indianapolis for several years, and he forgot more than anybody ever know.
A lot of people say that about you.
Yeah, so
Okay. The next one. Someone named Jesse says, I have a question. The engine is a Ford 460 stroked to a 503, but the particular engine doesn't matter. My question is about porting. Is there any benefit to leaving the combustion chamber a bit rough to help the air-fuel combustion process like the intake runner, or does it not matter once it's in the chamber?
I've never owned a dyno that I could use myself all the time and spend months and months checking that out or something.
Right.
But you'd have to ask somebody else who's done all that stuff and done a bunch of research. I think the port's a little rougher to keep it mixed up.
Yeah.
But once it gets in the chamber, it's not in there very long.
Yeah, just
And
instantaneously.
you already got the piston coming up, and it's all swirling anyways. The main thing is keep it swirling and become a mist or fog, not drops, but fog. And that's where you'll get all your power out of it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so
That's
I
answer.
would polish it probably. And
Why
the
not?
top of the piston, you don't want it to be sticking on there because you end up with some residue, oil residue or stuff will stick on the top of the piston and start building up. And you'd want that as smooth as you can.
Yeah. Okay.
Keep that as clean and above the rings, yeah.
Good point.
So I think
That's excellent.
yeah.
Okay. Mark has a question. I've been in dirt track racing for many years, and my brother and I have had quite a bit of success and love racing, always changing with technology. And I love it. Thank you for the videos, and thank you, Barry, for putting them out. So that's a very kind comment. Thank you,
Yeah, I like
Mark.
that. That's good. We not necessarily do we deserve it.
Yeah.
We hope we do.
We're having fun.
And we're just having fun, and I'm always thrilled that when people enjoy what we're doing because we're having fun too.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So
what was the question
the
about?
question was about quench, squish, and squench. I guess squench is a mixture of quench and squish.
I think somewhere is involved with compression. And you don't want to have too much compression because I think I've mentioned that once before. The guy had a small camshaft with big pistons. He had He couldn't even get it to go 4,000 RPMs because he only had about 400 pounds compression.
Right.
It took more horsepower to pull the engine at that much compression than the horsepower that the engine was putting out.
Right.
So in there, there's a happy medium in there.
Yeah.
And you'd want to have the compression a little bit less so the engine keeps rotating faster and putting out more horsepower. That's the curve. From 1,000 all the way to 8,000. Mm-hmm. That quench and stuff all has to be perfect to get it to go that much. And those motors, again, we have a friend of mine I've been for 60 years. His son has the motor car now, Dean Carter here in town. Everybody's races nationwide, and was a national record holder and national points champion and competition eliminator for years. And I think everybody that races knows who he is.
Yeah.
But his car right now, his little motor's got a very expensive motor, and I think he's running over 10 grand now, 10.5, something like that. And it's extremely fast, but in that stuff, it's taken a long time to get all those numbers and common sense in line.
Yeah.
So there's what you're talking about, more not necessarily numbers. So it's hard to get those, any kind of machine to produce those numbers. That you would say at 3,000 you got too much flow or not enough. When the tachometer is going between 4,000 to 10,000.
Right.
So it's just trial and error. That takes years
to
get that thing to run. And sometimes you luck onto it and the rotor runs so fantastic. And don't tell nobody that.
And it's got to be a good feeling when that all just lines up.
Yeah, it all lines up.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. Yeah. Like that dyno we did the other day with the flathead, with the supercharged flathead.
Yeah.
That day it seemed like it all lined up with that motor.
That was good.
That was a good. So you need to get the video out.
The video's not out yet, but by the time this video out, it's probably will be out.
Yeah.
So you can look for. We did go with our friend Steve Kopic, took a flathead and built the engine up and put a supercharger. And that was the first time I'd ever heard a supercharged flathead run myself.
Yeah. And it sounded like a big block Chevy.
It did. It sounded really big.
Yeah, it did.
So look for that video. Next question from Peter. Bearing selection. I wish we had a better selection even to choose from. Cleveite H bearings come narrow for stroker applications using Chevy rod journals and big radius cranks, but they're pretty hard. I like the King soft bearing much better. What do you have to say about all that? That's
bearings is something he knows what he's talking about.
Okay.
It's hard to find somebody that knows much about bearings. Mm-hmm. And the King bearings, okay, they're a softer bearing, and so and the bearings is always a serviceable item.
Right. You
better service it. Some years ago, we had some that there was about 4 of us standing out here in the driveway, and this guy came from the other side of we were in Scottsdale somewhere, drive up in his pickup truck, and he walks up to us and he says, "What are you talking about? Rod bearings?" I think that was about 15 years ago. And he reached in his pocket and he had a whole handful of them. And that's when the aluminum was coming out of the bearing.
Oh, wow.
And it looked like alligator skin. It wasn't a smooth bearing at all. He had a whole handful in his pocket. And normally you don't come over here. But 4 of us already standing in the driveway talking about them.
That's funny.
And I think we were having trouble with the oil then.
Okay.
And so we had a good conversation there. But anyways, go back to the bearing. The King bearing's okay. We ran them forever. We still have boxes of them over here. And sometimes in that, the same thing is this, if you need to have them a little bit tighter on the crank so you don't get that harmonics. Now this is sounds like he's got an expensive motor and it goes higher RPMs. And so you don't get those harmonics of that connecting rod shaking on the crank.
Okay, so if it's just a little too loose,
yes,
it creates a vibration spot.
And the whole thing. And if you tighten that up to less than 1,000ths on the crank and use some, you got to talk to your oil people, Lake Speed.
Yeah.
And he knows a lot about this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to touch the edges. But anyways, it stops our harmonics, and right away the horsepower goes right up. Stops that engine from harmonics. And also the same thing is we might take a brand new crankshaft or order one at 350 crank, turn down to to a 2-inch throw.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the bearing, we take a 350 crank and turn it 30 under. So now that bearing is 30 thousandths thicker. And so it's 15 thousandths there. You got more cushion, like he just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
There's cushion on the bearing, the softer bearing, the cushion on the crank. That closer clearance on the crank,
Mm-hmm.
then you won't have that shock problem if you had 1 or 2 thousandths clearance on the rods.
Okay.
Rod bearings. So that's to service it again.
Mm-hmm.
Keep track of it. Stuff. But the thicker bearing is always good, more cushion. And some of the Cleveland bearings are pretty hard bearing.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah,
you agree with them?
rough, a little rough on the crank. And so good luck.
Okay. John just asked, would you ask Ed what he thinks about the Chevy 57 to 61 Turbo Glides? You can say whatever you think. It's okay.
You know, a Turbo Glide was a reverse pitch in the transmission. It actually, on the shifter, didn't have low, it had a GR for grade. And went between low, as far as I remember, between low and drive, it reverse pitched the transmission.
Huh.
And I don't know, I never worked on any of them. I don't think I ever had one tore apart or anything. And I don't know if they dependable or not. I don't know.
Yeah.
There wasn't many of them.
Yeah.
I think I have a guy over here right now that's got a 57 Chevy, the neighbor guy, that's got some 350 transmission, but it's got GR on a shifter.
Huh.
So that car had that Turbo Glide.
Interesting. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, most people never heard of it because they had made a few of them, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a really weird shifting transmission.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's all I can tell you.
Okay. There's, I guess, a little bit of conversation about the 400 small block, 3 plugs, and a 2-bolt main. And some engine builder, he said, also thought the 3 plugs meant 4-bolt. And I guess, I don't know if that was consistent.
Usually, as far as I know, the 3-plug motors, 3 freeze plugs in it were 4-bolt main.
Okay.
Then the ones that were cast marks for 3 freeze plugs, but only had 2 freeze plugs. The center one was just an indentation where the freeze plug could be machined in there.
I see.
It was a 2-bolt main.
Okay. That's what you remember anyway.
Yeah, as far as I remember, our motors over here, as far as
Yeah, that's what you see.
I've never seen anything different than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've seen a lot of them.
Well, I've seen a few, yeah.
All right. Next question. What does Ed think about the Dart blocks? Dart Standard and the Dart Little M.
I built a couple, 3. I don't know much about those.
Okay.
Again, we never spent that much money in. But I built a couple 434s, small blocks, with a Dart block.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were different oiling in the back and different things like that. But they put out way too much horsepower for our dirt track car.
Mm.
The driver couldn't drive them. And about the time it got into the torque curve where the torque and RPMs was where it really started doing some good work, then it would just spin the wheels.
Oh, okay.
And he couldn't pedal the throttle.
Mm.
And I think he was one of the better drivers there is.
Yeah.
And we won a lot of races, but he couldn't handle that. So, and the other one was in that, and we sold that motor to a guy in Las Vegas. He has a big track up there in Las Vegas, and he could just run around the track and have a lot of fun. And he did have a lot of fun with it, I think.
Okay.
And the other one was we put in that Henry J.
Oh, yeah.
That little orange Henry J with a 434 with a power glide and single 4-barrel. And that was a fast car.
Mm.
And we just had it for display things and match race a few things. But that's the orange Henry J, the missing link.
That's right. Yeah, that's
there's
right.
a die-cast car made of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had 3 of our cars made, die-cast cars made of them.
Have you
Model
really?
cars, yes.
Okay, so besides Henry J, what were...
The black 09 car, and we had a late model, not a late model, but a mid-size circle track car.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the 3 models over here.
Yeah, I'll have to see those.
I think you still can buy that, the missing link, Henry J.
Okay.
It says Ed Smith on the front fender.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think so, yeah.
That's cool. Okay, about shimming. This is Phil. About shimming the 318 motor. I know you can shim the valve springs in those motors when you rebuild them, but that's all I could think of. Do you know anything about that?
318 Dodge?
Yeah.
Okay. Shimming the valve springs?
I think that's what he said.
That's what he's talking about. Yeah, you can do that. You can shim any valve springs.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing about a 318, you have to be real careful. And the Dodge, even I don't know what year he's talking about. I don't think he's looked there's an early motor up to maybe, I don't know what year that's, 63, I guess, or 64, somewhere on there. They changed the late model 318 is the same as 340, and the same 360. You have to be real careful there because the valve guides are too tall in the head. If you do much at all with the can, then if you don't machine the valve guide itself down shorter, and you put the rubber seal over them. If you put anything at all, then the valve and the valve locks and the retainer will hit that rubber seal and cut it off.
Oh, wow.
And almost hit the block, the cylinder head itself. The little pipe sticking out, the valve guide pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you need to be careful and machine that down.
Good
They
point.
really come close right now. And what they're doing is making that pipe or the valve guide as long as they can to keep more stability on the valve.
Uh-huh.
But I think on that particular motor, we know that we'd be real careful on the height of that thing when we rebuild it more in the shop.
Yeah. I think that earlier 318 was called the Poly.
Yeah, that was the early one. There's the solid lifters, and that was from 57 to 63 or something somewhere like that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But that's the only thing I know about the shim and the valve springs. Other than that, you can shim any valve springs or whatever you want to do.
Do what you want.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're back to the 402 bolt question.
Okay.
I was hoping you'd ask him about the 402 bolt being stronger than the 4 bolt when it's bored and made into a 421 high rev dirt car application.
Read that over again. The 400?
Yeah, the 402
bolt
bolt
is stronger than the 4
stronger
bolt?
than the 4 bolt when it's bored out to 421.
I don't think it would be. I always choose the 4 bolt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd always choose that. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I don't know if he's talking 4 bolt 350 and the 4 bolt 400.
Yeah, well, he just talked about 4. Yeah, he didn't call out the 350. So
yeah, I was just talking about the 400.
Yeah.
The 400, the main caps are wider.
Okay.
A 350 cap, if you had one in your hand here, just a main bearing cap for a 350 or 2 bolt main would be a certain size, and the 400 blocks, the main caps are longer width-wise, gives you a bit more stability on the block, rocking that main cap back and forth.
I see.
So we like that. The 2 bolt main blocks, it's got short caps on a 350, and then with the 4 bolts, you end up with that cap down. It fits in the block better with 4 bolts in it, and it keeps that cap from walking back and forth.
That's
Not
a good
necessarily
reason.
any stronger that it's going to break and come apart.
Yeah. Huh.
So that's, stability more than anything else.
Steve from Australia. What is the range of cam degrees that you would play within? What would be the range of? He's currently assembling an old Holden inline 6. The cam has 23 teeth, so to bump it over 1 tooth would be 15.6
Oh, that's way too
degrees.
much. Oh, no. You're talking 2 or 3 degrees.
Okay.
So I'll just say what we know about that. I don't know about that whole motor. I don't know. I'll have to come down there and take a look at it.
Yeah, let's take a field trip to Australia.
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah, I'll go down to Bisbee. I had some customers, we've seen them in California. We visited sometimes, and then I used to go to the swap meets in California, and I sold a lot of parts, used parts to people in Australia. One guy, I don't know if there's some kind of a speed shop out there. It's a 2-story, and the whole building is made out of rocks, round rocks.
Wow.
And he showed me a bunch of pictures of it, but they fixed the cars up on the 2nd floor. Well, he may be in a town somewhere around that place, but that's who I knew. Yeah.
Okay.
And so anyways, let's go back to the way it's probably, is if you advance the camshaft, and it's easy to check on camshaft advancement. So if you degree it 1/1000th and move the camshaft ahead of the crankshaft, the valve will change positions 10/1000ths.
Like a 10-to-1 ratio, basically?
Yeah, yeah. So if you took a camshaft and had a built-in motor, and you turned the crankshaft over on compression, and you measured the top, the 2 valves, lifters. The lifters are sticking up. You put it straight across there, and see that one is not any higher than the other one. So if one was higher than the other, you take that in consideration on one compression, like number one.
Mm-hmm.
And perfectly, both lifters would be same. Then you turn on a half a revolution or one revolution over. Then one is going up and the other is going down. When you do that, if you put it up on top dead center again, and the intake was higher than the exhaust, that means it's advanced.
Okay.
Perfectly would be the same. Same as it was on split overlap.
Mm-hmm.
Or in compression, it's all the same. Every time, every revolution, the lifters would be the same, not one higher than the other. If you advance it, the intake's going further, so you're moving the whole intake ahead of the head of the engine.
You're right.
Yes, it's going to raise your low end. It's going to raise compression.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you raise the compression, you got more power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, so we want to raise it. Maybe if you check compression gauge, you'd have, I don't know what that thing has, maybe a 120 compression. If you advance it, you'd have probably 125 or 130. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
You get more air in there before it clamps
It's so
down.
easy to change that by measuring the cost of the top of the lifter with a straight edge.
Okay, but
So-
your answer though, 15.6 degrees.
That'd be 150 thousandths
Yeah.
if you had 15 degrees. No,
Yeah.
you can't do that.
Right.
If there's some way in the keyway, advance the keyway, or moving the cam gear ahead of the crank.
Mm-hmm.
Some on the keyway or a round button. If it's got a pin, we can buy offset buttons. Washers that are made over to one side of those on advanced kits and stuff like that. So do your research.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're
Well, he was
interested in doing something.
Yeah, he's having some fun, but his gut feeling was, he says, seems like a lot to me.
It would be. Tom.
Yeah,
That's too much. Yeah.
Yep.
2 or 3 degrees is a lot.
Yeah.
And you'll notice it right away. And sometimes we run 2 degrees, that's 20 thousandths. That would be a good start.
Yeah. Okay.
And the more you advance it, the more the intake valve gets closer to the piston. I don't think you have that trouble.
Right.
Yeah, that's some kind of a technical motor that does that. So
Yeah.
yeah, good luck. Sounds like he's going to have fun.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah,
Steve. And cheers to you down there in Australia.
Yeah.
They're getting over their summer right now.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's good for them. Is it true that a smaller cubic inch engine doesn't like too much compression versus a bigger stroke engine like a 360 sprint car versus a 410 sprint car? What's the science?
Sprint car, he's running alcohol in it.
Ah, that would be why.
Yeah, he's running alcohol in it, and the alcohol burns slow. It don't fire like gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he's doing there, but he needs to get a little more information there. But yeah, a sprint car, a 410s is that same thing. You know, that thing is just so sweet. The right cubic inches in the stroke and the intake and exhaust and the intake, whatever kind of injector he's got on, but he's running alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So he can bump the timing way up and run twice as much fuel. He's running twice as much fuel as he is in gasoline. So you wouldn't want that little motor with that much compression. Probably wouldn't start.
Right?
Yeah, probably wouldn't. It'd ruin the starter trying to get it started.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have airflow at all.
Right.
As far as airflow, we talk about that sometimes, the airflow intake and through the engine and through the compression and back out the exhaust pipe. The engine wouldn't have that much airflow. Even though I do not know anything about two-stroke motors.
Right.
I never played with a two-stroke motor. Even though I had some ATCs, and I think I still have a couple over here, but I never tore them apart and tried to do anything with them.
Yeah.
But that's that small stroke motor that goes lots of RPMs.
All right, here's the last question.
I
It's a
don't know.
pretty simple one. We were talking about fuel pulse.
Yeah, on
And
fuel pump.
on a fuel pump, and he just says, it's Michael, and he just said, would a couple fuel filters between the pump and the car?
It would handle that a little bit, but you'd still like to have that canister.
Okay, all
And
right.
you'd still like to have a bigger volume. You're still going to jiggle both of them. And that's just like we like to have a rubber hose or a flex line between the fuel pump and the carburetor. Because that, if you have a steel line like the factory did all the time, that fuel pump pulsing all the time and shaking the fuel line will rip the threads out of the carburetor.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, just a little flex pipe somewhere between the fuel pump itself and the carburetor.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, that wraps us up for today.
Okay, good.
Ed, thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Maybe we'll go get an ice cream cone.
Let's do that.
Not quite warm enough outside, but we can do that.
Okay. Well, thank you all for watching. And by the way, we are looking into maybe some kind of a program where you can buy Ed or me a cup of coffee. So we'll see if we can work that out.
I'd like somebody to buy me a coffee.
Okay.
Get tired buying my own, maybe. I don't know, not.
We're just trying to think of ways to keep this thing going a little better. That's all.
We'll see what happens.
Thank you for coming along, and thank you for all your comments, your questions. It's awesome, and we really do appreciate. We have really great subscribers and viewers.
Yeah, we have a lot of good people.
Very good people.
Just the other day in one of my messages, it says, I have so many good friends.
Mm-hmm.
So many.
Yeah, that's good.
High school friends and friends everywhere.
It's
really, I'm
it's a blessing.
Blessing to have that many friends.
Yeah.
And good health too.
That's right.
Good.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming.